I got my intro kicked on. So let the intro play and then we'll get into it.
Look up a second microphone. I'm going to turn off the picture.
Alright.
There we go. I just got me a second condenser and put it out kind of out of the room. That way I can kind of sit back and hold up the desk.
Alright, I got my intro music playing right now, so that'll go on for about a couple of minutes and then we'll get into it.
Alright, I'll just wait on you. Wait on your cue here.
Alright, works.
Just eat it. Put it right on my gums. So much.
That's a squeaky ass chair.
Oh, it's so funny when it comes through.
Oh, you're hearing all the little squeaks and pops.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll turn the sensitivity down a little bit. Is it too loud or is it? I mean, if I turn the sensitivity down some, is it going to kill it?
Oh man, don't worry about it. Well, I didn't,
Someone's killing these people, trust me.
You're listening to Meadows and Makers
This
podcast.
right quick. I can't stand up the whole time.
Jacked up and making stuff. Peace.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Meadows and Makers podcast here on the MSP Waves, this live interactive social media broadcasting. So right up front, let me go ahead and handle this disclaimer, which is the views and opinions of myself and those that of my guests on the show do not reflect on MSP Waves and the wonderful people that keep this thing going. And so welcome everybody to another week. And we got returning guests coming today. We got my buddy Robbie Olson. And we're just kind of going to riff it a little bit today. So Robbie's a guy that is a man of many talents and does a lot of different things and has been one of my mentors when it comes to doing aquaponics and different self-sufficiency related things. So I got him piped in through a Zoom call because we have some issues with him and Discord. So hopefully everything come on to play out. So yeah. So yeah, sorry about the little playover on the intro music and with Robbie's call coming in. So yeah, it's just trying to figure out how to make it all work today, and so we had some issues with Discord, so we're just trying to troubleshoot real quick and figure out a solution with this Zoom. So we're planning on doing an episode in the future as well, talking about some of the healing technologies with specifically the Rife machine, and we're gonna do something through Zoom. So we've been trying to figure that out. So that seems to work with his equipment, but not Discord. So I'll figure something out in the future and be able to do a little bit better job with that. So, but yeah, we got Robbie on today, and yeah, how's it going, Robbie? How you doing, man?
Going good, man. Just trying to
Awesome.
get this equipment stuff ironed out. You know how that goes.
Yeah. You got a little bit of a tenuous, if that's the right word, a little bit of issue with some of your microphone equipment and all that stuff. But you have like some kind of crazy mixer, right? Because you do a bunch of different things, like you do some rock music and different stuff, right?
Yeah, I've got one of those Soundcraft wireless mixers, that you can control it with your iPad, or you can pipe it into a touch screen, LCD and control it that way. But it don't have an interface on it like the actual knobs.
Yeah.
I've had those in the past, and they're real big and cumbersome. But you always have the problem of if you're doing anything live or trying to record or working with anybody, you've got to go way over to wherever they're at to hear what it sounds like, and then come back and try to mix it, and you're kind of, you know, in a bad place unless you can stick the mixer out there, which is not easy to do. But with this thing, you can grab your iPad and just go right out to where the sound zone is, and then you can mix it to however you want it.
All right.
Take off. And not only that, but it has a direct USB 3.0 interface and has a record feature so that you can stick a USB 3.0 memory stick in it and record direct. And just opens up a lot of doors. It's a real neat mixer thing.
Cool, man. So I appreciate you joining me today on the show, and I just figured that we just kind of get up to speed on what you had going on, and maybe just kind of get into some different topics. Right off the bat, I just want to thank everybody in the audience that's hanging out with us right now. We got Patient Zero, Peachy Mud, we got Rondell, Sunravel Me, and Space Taste. Appreciate you guys hanging out in the Discord chat with us, and feel free to come in with any questions or anything during the show. If you guys have anything that pops up while we're chatting, just jump on in, and we'll see what you guys got to. See if we can answer some questions. If anybody has any questions for Robbie or anything like that as they come up, I'll just bring them on. So you've just recently moved, and you moved to a new property, and you've been doing a lot of renovations, right?
Yeah, it's been a task. We had found this property through the newspaper, and we had to jump on it right then. So, we packed up and moved and sold our place and moved into this new place, knowing that we're going to have to do a total renovation. And so when you're living in a place and having to renovate it too, it gets kind of hairy. So I'm a little scattered out. I've got stuff stuck in storage and in boxes and all over the place, but we're managing. So I'm finally starting to get to where don't have so much stuff scattered out. Yeah.
So you did you redid, you put all new hardwood floor in there, right?
It's a total remodel. First thing we had to do is get rid of all the junky windows that were in the house. So I got a good deal on those, and we went around the entire house and replaced all the windows. And then come to find out, I couldn't just leave the siding either because of the way it was set up. So I wound up having to replace all the siding and all the windows and all the doors around the entire house, first thing.
Yeah.
And while we're living there, nonetheless. And so that's that got to be it's a pretty hairy task there.
Yeah.
So we got that done, and then the northern wing of the house, which I'm calling it, had all the bedrooms in it, and 2 out of the 3 bedrooms were gutted, and 2 out of the 3 bathrooms were gutted. So I wound up gutting the other bathroom, and so at one time we had a little half bath and a shower off in the laundry room that we were using while I had 3 bathrooms under construction. But finally got those things taken care of. So that's been my big push, is to get in there where we can live and be sane.
Yeah. Cool.
Other than that, we'll have it going on, and I'm having to do hardwood floors and the whole 9 yards. But the place, it's got 41 acres, and it's a fairly large house, and got a barn, and I got it at such a price I just couldn't walk away from it. So, and the house is not that old. I know I said I got to renovate it, but it was built in 1980. So,
oh wow.
So it's not that old. It's just the windows and stuff like that's outdated and was leaking real bad. And the guy that built the house never did finish parts of it and that sort of thing. So.
Yeah. Just little things here and there. Yeah. So, if you have any pictures of that, if you want to drop them in the Discord, you're free to do that. So you've finally got through a lot of that stuff, and you're started working on your aquaponics system again, huh?
Yeah, I got started back on that yesterday. Matter of fact, I think I may have sent you a picture of those little posts that I had sticking up there. When I first moved in, I rented a Bobcat and got out there and spent a whole week just prepping the pad area for my new greenhouse, because the greenhouse I had before was it had its own little pad, but it was kind of at the bottom of this little hill. And every time it rained, water would run underneath the thing. And, that just makes it so that it's just a pain to keep up with, because you have weeds growing and all sorts of things. And in this case, it's elevated and the water runs away from it, and got a gravel base and all of that stuff. So it'll be a lot better scenario this go around. I won't have a dirt floor. I'll have a gravel floor, and it'll be elevated. So no more flooding in the greenhouse. Once I get the top on it, it'll be dry.
Yeah. It's nice having that some kind of gravel as a base. I did that with the one in town in the city, and it's nice having that. You put a nice sheet of plastic down, and you keep all the weeds and everything out as well.
Yeah, and if you use the limestone stuff, it won't let mold and stuff like that tends not to grow nearly as well in that.
Oh, okay.
Of course, you don't want to use that in your aquaponics itself, but
right.
As far as the floor system, it's great.
Right. So right now you're putting in all the ribs to the greenhouse and you're actually concreting those in.
Yeah, what I do is I put legs in. I went and bought some steel that matches the rib profile. In other words, the rib profile is a 1 inch by 2 inch steel tube.
Yeah.
And it's bent into a Gothic arch, and then it has like a 2-foot leg on it or something. And then so what I do is I come in and I buy these 24-foot sticks and cut them down into 6-foot pieces, and bury 2 feet of it, and let 4 feet stick up, 4.5 feet or so. Then I take a laser level and go down through there and get them all the same height, cut them off, and then stand my ribs up on top of that. And that gives me like anywhere from a 12 to 13 foot high ceiling.
Okay.
And keeps the heat up real high away from the plants, and does a number of things. So gives you a lot more space to work.
Okay. So
plus, it anchors the ground really well too. So you want a rigid structure.
Yeah. So that thing will be pretty windproof. Have you experienced some pretty intense winds down there? I know that we've had a lot of tornadoes and stuff come through, and you said you had one that was real close to your house, didn't you?
Yeah, we had here 2 or 3 weeks ago. They had a tornado warning come up, and it was I don't know, 7 or 8 miles from here. But I got out in the yard and I could see the cloud going across the yard, and it was really strange because the clouds were rushing in from the west, moving east, and then if you turned around and looked, you would see the clouds rushing in from the southeast, going northwest, and they were rushing into a central point, and it was really surreal to look at that. But it missed us by a few miles, but it didn't really do much damage because it never really touched down. But
yeah.
It was spooky, I can tell you that.
Yeah, I bet so, man. Yeah, so you think you're gonna have a bunch of issues with real bad tornadoes coming through that area, or you think you might be all right?
I hope not. I really hope not.
Yeah. So yeah, man. So you got all this going on, and I know that we're talking a little bit about getting together, and I'm moving down that way, and maybe even getting together and trying to do some experimentations, and one of our show is up in the future that we're planning on doing is some of the Rife machine, and you said you had a family member that had one of these machines, right?
Yeah. My mom and stepdad bought one 3 or 4 years ago. It's called the Beam Ray, and people that make it, guy's name's Tom Dupree, but he was a relative, from what I understand. Now I could be mistaken, but from what I understand, he was a relative of Rife, and it's based off the same sort of technology. It utilizes a plasma tube, a vacuum tube that they, light up with voltage to create a plasma. I don't know if it's it puts off a number of different things. It's a frequency pulse of light and magnetic energy. But I've learned some stuff over the last few years about how genetic information is transferred through light and radio waves and other things. So it's not outside the realm of possibility to me that these things do what they say. All you have to do is sit underneath that thing for a little while, and you can tell stuff's going on.
Yeah, there's there's videos of this one guy that he did a TED talk, and he shows how they could target frequencies that could eliminate certain viruses or certain cells by resonating them at a certain frequency. And since cells are hold like a crystalline structure, if you can hit the resonance, it could blow it all apart. So Sun Ravel Me was just asking around what area in Alabama you're in.
I'm in Huntsville, which is just south of Coleman. I'm between Coleman and Birmingham. So
yeah, I forgot
40
that.
miles north of
Okay, yeah, you were down in Warrior, and so you're closer to Huntsville now, huh?
Birmingham. I'm actually in Huntsville now. I was in Warrior.
Oh, okay, yeah, cool.
Yeah, so I'm actually in Huntsville. I moved further north. I was about 20 minutes further south before.
Yeah, Sun Ravel Me. Yeah, Alabama's pretty bad with tornadoes. Actually, we had back in April of 2011, we had some of the biggest tornado outbreak in the country. I don't know, it was 40 tornadoes in one day or something like that. It was crazy.
Yeah, it's weird if you go look at the geology of the state and you look at those mountains in the north east part of the state, the way it runs, at an angle. If you look at the tornado paths, they follow that same line, except they're offset by a number of miles, but the directionality is the same. So it seems to me that a lot of the weather gets funneled up in these little zones, and so that's why you have these little alleys. But that's just been my observation. That may be total bunk. I don't know.
Yeah.
It does seem to me, though, if you're we live right next to a mountain where we were at before, and the weather always went either north or south of us because we were right at the foot of that mountain. So.
Yeah, that's another thing that I've noticed is it follows the ridge lines. There's the Cumberland Plateau in northern Alabama, and the tornadic activity. If you look at all the past traces, you can see that it follows the geology of that Cumberland Plateau as well.
It seems to mirror that geology. It might be a number of miles off, but the directionality is the same.
Yeah, man. Yeah, so yeah, I know you've been playing around with some of these technologies for a little while, and you've even proved some of the things, or you've built some of the devices yourself, right? Well,
I've built a number of different.
Well, you started off by doing a lot of stuff with capacitors and things, right?
Yeah, we started off. I started off just reading a lot of Tesla and thinking about what it would take to get in there to replicate some of that. And then I got to reading Tom Bearden and through Tom Beard and got introduced to, you know, the John Bedini stuff.
Yeah.
And then, of course, did the John Bedini replicate thing. And it took me several years of messing with all this stuff to really understand why it was doing what it was doing, or supposedly was doing what it's doing, because it didn't seem to make a lot of sense at the front side of it. But when you factor in the quantum side of it and you're taking these signals, basically what you're doing is doing a rapid switch or a collapse. And every time you do this, it forces that that energy to redirect in a different way. And so it, depending on the setup, whether you're doing it with voltage or magnetic fields or current or whatever, you'll get different types of results or different types of effects. So it's pretty interesting stuff. And there's a lot that I haven't got into that I really want to get into. I want to do some of the lifter experiments as well. You know,
Yeah, when you talk about lifter experiments, what are you talking about? The anti-gravity propulsion stuff?
Yeah, I'm talking about the electrogravitic stuff. You know, I'd like to mess around with some of that and maybe get into some metastate materials. You know, these quasi crystals and things like that, and then you start applying the scalar fields to things along those lines, and you can, you know, just to see what it'll do.
Yeah.
I don't know how it would react, how a scalar field would react to an electrogravitic type device, but you know, it may do something, it may do nothing. But and then you also have the scalar interferometry, where you can create action at a distance by overlaying beams of energy at different frequencies, and then wherever the interference pattern is, you'll have a specific thing that'll happen. You know, a heating, a cooling effect, or
Yeah, I started to read. I started to read a little bit of the. I think you sent me the Paul Laviolette's "Secrets of Anti-Gravity Propulsion" thing, and I think I don't know, one of the excerpts I guess that I was looking at was something that you were talking about with these meta materials, where it's like a laser that you can shoot down and it reflects back, and then if you get it to harmonize, I guess, at some frequency, then you can get this like feedback loop going, I guess, and do some.
Yeah, that's what they call a phase conjugate return, and the return beam returns back the exact line that it went on before, but it's in phase angle reverse, but it's in time. It's a time phase angle reverse, so that it gets negating effect. It's really weird stuff.
Yeah. Well, we would definitely want to do a show where we kind of break down the science of starting with the Rife machine, I think, and going into the theory behind it.
Machine, because that's fairly easy to understand. And what's fascinating to me about the Rife machine is, you know, you have the medical establishment which will sit around and deny that it exists or that it works or whatever. But at the same time, you have an industry out there in agriculture, for instance, where they have these devices that put off two specific resonant frequencies that kill algae. So you can drop these things in these ponds, like say you're raising catfish or whatever, you know, and you got an overgrowth of algae. You can throw this device out there in your pond and it'll kill off all the algae. And all it is an electrical device putting out a specific frequency that resonates with the algae and kills the algae. And the same principle applies on all the Rife stuff. Because
we're electrical beings, right? We all have.
Yes, we are electrical beings, and every cell in your body has an electrical current to it, electrical voltage. And depending on you touched on it a while ago, depending on the structure of the cell and how it uses the crystalline structure of the water around it, it will resonate at a different frequency than other cells. And so you can resonate one without even harming anything else. And so he had a Rife himself had a 100% cure rate in cancer back in the 30s, late 30s, and he was put in federal prison for it.
Yeah.
So that'll tell you something right there.
Yeah, I've seen several people in a video from the latest Anarchapulco where they had a machine set up that was supposed to be based on Rife's technology as well. And I've seen other posts. There's a Steamy on here, Kenny's Conscious Kitchen, and he did a post about an underground health clinic in Washington, I believe, that does these type of technologies as well. So I think some of these things they pop up, but they're like more, just kind of like, do it at your own whatever. And they're kind of on the down low.
Yeah, you would have to keep it on the down low because you can get in legal trouble in some areas for doing stuff like that. I mean, look at what they tried to do in California out there a couple of years ago. They tried to make it so that if you want to opt out for a particular vaccine or a treatment that a doctor recommends, then you could you'd be deemed mentally unfit and then forced into it. And I mean, is that really this is the essence of this Bernie care crap too? I mean, is this really what we want? But yeah, they definitely, the pharmaceutical companies have definitely got a stranglehold on that, and they keep it on they keep everybody like that on a defensive posture so that it keeps them down.
Yeah. So one of the questions that came in from the audience here is from Patient Zero. He's asking if you've he's asking about if anybody has the Spooky 2. Have you heard about that machine?
Spooky 2.
Yeah.
Well, I can see it on the post up here, and I haven't looked into it. There's a number of different ways that this stuff can be implemented. You can have a DC voltage coming in off of a plate where you can energize the cells. You can do frequency response to invigorate cells. You can do frequency response to kill particular cells. It's really wide ranging. And then you have the aspect of whether it's light, whether it's magnetism, whether it's sound, because sound is going to give you a different type of thing than an actual electrical stimulus would, or even light. So, the one thing that kind of perturbs me a little bit is people start jumping up and down about, these beats or something that you see online, like on YouTube. You can cure your cancer with a binaural beat, download this. Well, number one, the signal's compressed. You're probably missing some of the underlying tones. And number two, having an earbud, the sound come into your earbud right there is not going to resonate a cancer cell in your abdomen, So that's not going to work. But, if you had something where you could put on headphones, to cancel out noise or whatever, and then you could sit in front of a speaker and then blast your abdomen with it, then it might have some kind of result that way. But from what I've seen with that Rife machine that my mother has, or the beam ray, the light seems to work really well because the light can penetrate below the skin level and get in there to it. And it's really amazing how cells pick up that energy. But no, I haven't looked into the Spooky 2.
Yeah.
I can see the picture here, but it looks like there's a number of different things. They have some little handles that you can hold and see some wiring, things like that. So,
so Patient Zero saying that he's saying that it can work from a distance, so you can give it your hair thumbnail, and supposedly it does its voodoo. So, yeah, I don't know about that.
yeah, I know that one my mother has does that. As soon as they got it, my stepdad, the first thing that he did was turn it on for warts and moles, and he sat under the thing for about an hour and got it. Said, well, I don't think it's going to do anything. And 2 weeks later, he got to notice, and he didn't have any warts or moles or anywhere. You know, they were just gone.
Really?
And so, yeah. So I mean, that's the kind of thing that, and it's real subtle. But there's something else that you have to be aware of when you're using these types of technologies is you can overdo it in one setting. And, you know, if you have a chronic condition or if you've got something going on, you'll overload your system because you'll have these, let's say that you're detoxing or you're killing off cancer. Well, you kill off some of the cancer cells. Well, those cancer cells then are just dead material floating around in your bloodstream. Well,
Yeah.
you have to be filtered out, you know, through the liver and through the kidneys, and then, you know, down through the intestinal tract and all of that stuff. So you don't want to overload your system. If you sit underneath that thing to kill cancer and you sit on it for 6 hours for 3 days in a row, you're liable to have liver failure, you know, because it's just going to overload you.
Oh.
So you got to be careful in those areas so that you want to limit the amount of exposure that you have to these, you know, to smaller things. And I would dare say that a lot of these things that are coming out on the secondary market or aftermarket are probably scaled way back so that it would be difficult to overdo.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to run it a lot to see the effect. But and some of the more powerful units, you know, just 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes is all you want. And you want to walk away from that and come back the next day because it will overwhelm your system.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, patient zero is saying he'd like to get one, but it's pricey. So.
Yeah, those particular ones that my mother had, I think they give almost $5,000 for it.
Wow.
And it's got a stand, and it's got this big old 3-foot vacuum tube, you know, with this pulsating plasma light.
Yeah.
And then it's got a computer, and the computer has all of these frequencies programmed into it, and it's got the mechanism that drives the light built into the computer. It's just one box, you know, and you just plug in your display.
Hey, I guess if you never had to go to your doctor again, I mean, that return on investment could be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it works really well for, you know, sinus infections, lung. You know, of course, I haven't went and tested myself to see if I've got any kind of cancer or anything, but I have sat under it a time or two for cancer.
As a prevention or as a
Just to prevent it, yeah, just a prevention thing, you know. Because what's
Yeah.
the worst it's going to do, you know? If you're targeting a particular cancer cell and you don't have any of it in your body, or very little of it, then it's not going to do much to you. You're just going to kill off what's there and not let it get a foothold.
So I've heard a lot of stuff. I've been looking into Wim Hof for a little while as well, and he claims and talks about how if you can alkalize your blood, and you can do this through just breathing techniques. If you alkalize your blood, then cancer really can't survive in an alkaline environment.
Right. That's another aspect of the whole thing too, because as you change the electrical components of your cellular structure, you're also changing the pH.
Yeah.
You help it because as the pH goes up and down, so does the voltage. And so, you know, just because of the amount of ion donors from the hydrogen. So, yeah, that comes into play. There was a book that I got on real early on before I even found the Rife stuff called The pH Miracle. And the guy was talking about that very thing, about how alkalizing your blood. I think the very, very first example of it I ever heard was that motivational speaker guy. What's his name? Tony Robbins?
Yeah.
He had a thing where he was talking about, you know, these people had done this research and they were showing these yeast, you know, inside of the bloodstream. and then as you alkalize the blood, it would kill off the yeast and this, that, and other. So that was my very first exposure, and then I read the book on the pH miracle after that, and then it just it dawned on me pretty early on there that this is not stuff that they're teaching people, or not telling people, at least in the main health industry, because cancer is big business. It's it makes a lot of money.
Yeah, man. Yeah. That's funny. Patient Zero said, he said, how do you alkalize your blood with breathing? And then he said, I alcoholized my blood last night.
Alkalize my blood last night. It worked really well.
Yeah.
I think we're talking about a different kind of alkalization.
Yeah. 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 So yeah, patient Zero, yeah, intentionally hyperventilated once to the point where your arms are tingling. Yeah, that's essentially what this Wim Hof breathing technique is doing. Is you're like hyperventilating. You're breathing in more than you're breathing out, and he says that that extra oxygen absorption is what is helping to alkalize your system. Yeah.
Yeah, see, the extra oxygen is going to react in your bloodstream with other chemicals in your blood and release electrons like an electron donor, so that your other cells can then absorb those electrons. So yeah, there's definitely something to that.
Yeah. So he's kind of in. His stuff is fascinating. They hooked him up to an MRI scan to look at in a CAT scan, I guess, for his brain, to look at his brain's activity during when he goes into his meditative state, when he's introduced to extreme cold. And they found that he is triggering the early part of the brain, the more reptilian part of the brain, and he is actually releasing endocannabinoids and opioids through that early stem of his brain when he goes into this meditative state. So it's like he's not only just rerouting his blood flow, but he's also creating a way to kill the pain, essentially.
Well, yeah, you have to do something to mitigate the damage as well. As you start freezing, you get that freezing cold in your toes, and especially if you're deliberately cutting off blood flow, I mean, you're talking about your toes and fingers and stuff like that.
Yeah, what is? Yeah, it's actually, he's redirecting his blood flow more internally, and it's actually it's helping him to generate heat in his extremities and stuff. So it's very fascinating.
Okay, so he's not pulling blood away from the extremities. He's using it to.
It's like redirecting Yeah, it's like it redirects his blood flow more internally, which it helps to generate more heat that way, I guess, and then in turn that's heating up his extremities as well. And so they do these exercises out in the cold and the snow, and they're not wearing like any shoes or anything like that, and they're generating enough heat to melt the snow around them. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, that just goes to show you that how consciousness can be linked to physical biology, whether we like it or not.
Yeah. So that goes along with a lot of the health work, and I think it's just, there are a lot of these methods and also technologies out there that are hidden from people that can really keep you out of the doctor's office. And I don't even know if we really need medicine other than maybe traumatic injuries. I think I think Western
we really
medicine
need it
is
for, for accidents. I'm in a car accident and my dadgum legs are broke all to pieces, take me to the emergency room. But you know, if I've got a little bit of a cough or something, I don't even go to the doctor anymore, man, because it just don't make any sense. You know, I'll start alkalizing my blood, taking high alkaline stuff in first, and then you know, if that don't get it, I'll go to my mother's and sit under that rife.
Yeah.
Thing, you know, my kids and wife and myself, you know, I don't think between us we probably hadn't been to the doctor 3 times in 10 years.
Yeah. And you said that you guys had a complete turnaround in a lot of your health when you started to grow your food via the
Well,
aquaponics system
exactly
too, right?
right. You get the organic stuff, and then when you combine that with the alkalinity, so you can absorb the nutrient correctly. First off, you got to have the nutrient, and then you got to have the blood chemistry to where you can absorb it.
Right.
So yeah, it's made a huge difference.
Yeah. So patient zero asks, what kind of high alkaline stuff do you take to alkalize your blood? What kind of stuff do you take as a supplement, or do you supplement at all?
Well, there's a couple things. You can take some supplements, but you can drink alkaline water. It's probably the easiest thing. Get you some pH 10 water and drink that. And what happens is the acid in your stomach ramps up, and then when that happens, it passes down into another little organ down in there that creates a lot of calcium carbonate, and the same damn thing is what happens in aquaponics, and it alkalizes your blood under those conditions because you have that calcium carbonate salt will be in your blood.
So
That's the same damn thing. I have found that the aquaponics relates so much to physiology and biology. It's not even funny. It's just ridiculous.
yeah. Very cool. Yeah. So yes. Also, is it bad if you overdo on the high alkaline water? Can you overdo it?
Yeah, you could overdo it. I wouldn't. You can overdo anything. I mean, you could take pH neutral water. If you drink 4 gallons of it at one sitting, it'll kill you.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So,
Because you get that, what is it called, hyperhidrosis or something of the cells, and they just blow apart.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would drink, you know, 16 ounces, 20 ounces, and space out another, you know, several hours and drink another, you know, and do that for a day or two and then lay off of it. And I just wouldn't do it constantly. I went and bought here back when I had that cold, you know, which I know the last time I was on, I was hacking and coughing, and but I went and bought a couple of gallons of pH 10 water, and we just recently finished that up. Of course, I'm not the only one that drinks it, you know. So
Yeah.
my daughter, my wife. So
is there a specific brand water or something? I remember hearing that Fiji water was a really good brand for like mineralized water, and it doesn't have as much.
Yeah, Fiji water tests out at around 8.9 to 9.1 or 2, depending on the batch that it comes in.
Okay.
The difference in that and the stuff that's alkalized off the tap, where they have that electronic alkalizer, the difference is that if you have a spring water like that, you're going to be loaded with mineral content, mineral salts as well. So if you have the alkalinity with the mineral salts, then you're getting a double whammy there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you have it's a specific brand of water, I guess, that you're buying, or are you producing it yourself?
Well, I'm not producing it. I could. They make a device that sits on top of your countertop, and it's electrical. It just has these electrical plates in it, and you turn on your water, and because of the charge in there, and because pH is related to charge, it will split off, and part of it will be alkaline, and part of it will be acidic, and the acidic part goes down the drain. The alkaline part goes out to a little spout you can collect. And,
okay.
I forget what they call that thing, but I've been looking at buying that just to have one around, because you can't always count on going to the store, and not only that, but I don't want to count on going to the store because my whole goal here is to get independent of that and be outside of the system. I want to be able to game the system and not be a subject of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, anything that I can do that gets me away from having to be dependent on running to the store to pick something up, I'm going to try to do that.
So one of the things I looked into a while back is sodium chlorite, and it turns into chlorine dioxide. And have you heard of anything like that? They use it as water treatment in third world countries, and instead of using, I guess there's another form of chlorine that we use in our water system, but chlorine dioxide, you can react it with like a weak acid, like a citric acid or something like that. Yeah, and it creates chlorine dioxide with sodium chlorite, and it comes in a flake, and and it's supposedly can help with healing from viruses and different things, because it actually goes in, and the extra oxygen from the chlorine dioxide will attach itself to the ionic charge of a virus or something like that, and just kind of blow it up is what.
So you're seeing a pattern here already, what you're talking about, because you're talking about the oxygen. We were just talking about oxygen a while ago.
Yeah.
And then one of the guys on here, patient 0 or whatever, was talking about the breathing,
Yeah.
So, there seems to be a pattern there, doesn't there?
Right.
The oxygen is linked to the alkalinity or the pH, and that's all linked electrically together.
Yeah. Right. Yep. Yeah, so definitely it's all about electricity, and it's about charges and different charges and everything. So once you kind of get that wrapped in your head, then you can kind of understand a little bit about how we can heal ourselves a little, or the possibility that it can't be around outside of the realm of possibility. So yes.
Yeah, and then you got the advent of what we were talking about before the show, which was based off of that 3D printing stuff. Of course, you could do the 3D printing and print, a new heart or a new liver or whatever, and you wouldn't have to be on one of these waiting lists forever. But I tell you one even better, because we're talking about the transfer of information for a particular organ or whatever. Knowing that it's electrically based on the cells, you can set up the information so that you can beam it into a group of cells, or even into a body or a person, and you can grow your own new kidney right inside your own body.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have to have surgery. Using these kind of technologies, you wouldn't have to have surgery. You would have preventive health. People would be living to be 100 years old like it was nothing. And it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't take it way past that, up into the 140s.
Yeah, I've heard of some things that say that we're kind of programmed in our DNA that we have a certain age limit as human beings, but if you could manipulate that gene in the DNA, that you could keep something, you could keep going for longer. So I think that's possible.
They're just now getting to the point where they can crack some of that information in the DNA, and it's been shown, and of course we've talked about this before, but it's been shown for a couple decades now that they can do what I was just talking about, where they can grow, organs inside the body, because all they do is transfer the information. And like you said before, on the 3D printing, you have to have a cell that has that information in it, like an existing liver cell or whatever.
Right.
If you're going to do the threading thing. Well, the same
Right.
thing applies, except what you're going to do is you're going to stimulate through electrical means the growth of, growth hormone or stem cells or whatever, and then you're going to transfer the information into it. And when you do that, it grows a new organ.
Yeah, yeah. So what we've seen is actually, and what is talked about. Uh, I recently read that book, the Compendium of the Emerald Tablets by Billy Carson, and what he was saying in there was that you can encode several terabytes of information onto DNA. So it is that your DNA is like a hard drive essentially. It's like an information. Yeah, it's just like an information bit database kind of.
Yeah, I read somewhere where they were talking about this huge amount of storage capacity that that DNA was capable of.
Yeah, yeah,
Did
that's
you?
what he talks about in that book, the compendium, is that yeah, you could literally take DNA and store, several terabytes of information onto the DNA and be able to, encode that DNA or encode information into the DNA. And
Yeah.
so that's pretty fascinating. And yeah,
Which
that
would that to me would beg the question: would it alter the DNA in such a way that it would make it unrecognizable on the, and how would that mutate the cells around it? I don't know how that would work. Let's just say hypothetically that a AI system figured out how to use this information transfer we've been talking about in order to take your DNA and use it as a storage medium for itself. How would that alter your biology? Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that kind of begs a question. I know I've been listening to a lot of what Max Igan is talking about with with 5G technology, and
well,
recently,
that segues right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He was talking about recently how he's been looking into some of our ancient past as well, and some of the information about this Tartarian society, which may have been around, in the 1800s or something like that, but we kind of lost all the information about them for some reason. And he was talking about how maybe with the interaction of 5G and the body of having the possibility of actually memory wiping people or even implanting different memories or different things with that technology.
I don't see why not. I think they're getting close to it, and then of course you kind of get into the whole consciousness thing. Then, um, is it the same person? Is it not? And that sort of thing. Hey, let me. I'm going to run in the other room over here. I've got a compressor that's sitting over there running. It's driving me crazy. Let me go shut that off.
All right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So yeah, that what Max Egan has talked about is kind of it really is interesting in to speculate on, because it from what he was talking about, there could have been this civilization Tartaria that was around in the recent history, and for some reason you go around the world and you see, in different places you see buildings that are built on top of like maybe 2 stories of buildings, and they found it, a lot of all over the world. Yeah. Yeah, the Chan Thomas Adam and Eve story was something that we actually got into a little bit before the show. Thank you for bringing that up, Patient Zero. Yeah, for the story of the previous cataclysms on the planet, and then that even speculates for the next cataclysm will be some type of weakening of our magnetic field, and so supposedly we're overdue for a pole shift in our magnetic field, and right now we're actually witnessing a quickening of the poles moving around right now. And supposedly the last cataclysm, um, on Earth was the big one that you get the floods, the story of the flood from, and you can see a lot of different information around the planet on evidence that actually happened. You can see like in the Andes, there's like whale and fish bones that they found, and there's a lot of places around the world that some are underwater now, and some that are some of these cities and pyramids are under the water, and then you have areas that that may have been washed away, and there's this one place in Africa called the Reshat structure, which is speculated to be Atlantis. And there's a really good video that this guy Bright Insight did recently that he talks about a lot of these things. He talks about the declassified document, the Adam and Eve story, and it's like 53 pages were released of like a 234 page document that were just recently declassified, but it goes into a lot of this information, and yeah, it goes along with what I've been reading in the compendium of the Emerald Tablets that Billy Carson wrote, is that Thoth was supposedly from the Atlantean civilization and was able to escape the Earth. They were able to kind of foresee the cataclysm, is what Billy Carson talks about in this book, and talks about how they had space travel technology. And then even in the book, it talks about having the ability to transfer consciousness and things like this. So yeah, what do you think about some of that, Robbie?
Well, I don't put any of that stuff outside the realm of possibility. Considering all the stuff that I've come across lately or in the last couple of years, you'd asked me that 5 years ago, I probably would have been telling you, well, probably sound like a lot of fiction to me, but I don't know. There's just so much of the stuff ties together, and what is consciousness anyway? They're talking about now that the brain is acting like a quantum computer, and that we're probably in multiple realities at one time. So the big, you get pretty deep into this stuff, and you get somebody that is advanced, like what they describe in that book of Thoth. There's no telling what they're contemplating or whatever, especially if they're doing it on multi-planes or multiple dimensions, or their brain is enhanced to a point to where quantum computation is occurring at a higher level than what we are doing. They would be able to perceive in and out of time and all sorts of things, because they would be entangled, with other things. So it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it is really cool. Okay, yeah, Greg, I see that you are on here. Let me see, unmute you. Let's see. Yeah, you look like you're probably muted on that end. Yeah, I think you just unmuted. See if you can say a couple.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Greg, how's it going, man?
Pretty good.
All right.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah. So, Robbie, this is Gregory Patrick. I know you're familiar with him, but I invited him to join in on our conversation.
Yeah, I've listened to you several times.
Yeah.
Oh, appreciate it, man. Awesome hanging out.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So, what do you think about this? The whole ancient. I know that kind of segues into a little bit about your book too. Do you kind of see, or have you looked into how this could be a possibility with some of these cataclysms happening on a regular basis?
I absolutely believe it. I mean, there's craters that are big enough to, account for 10 megaton bombs that are out there, like even close to where I'm at. And there's a recent one in Nova Scotia that, I don't know if you were talking about that earlier, but yeah, it could have leveled the whole world in a week. And, it's one of those things, like there's just so much evidence out there. There's so many things we have no idea how to explain it. And I mean, I've even gone and looked at, when the scientists of modern day go, yeah, you can cut, granite blocks with a rope and some sand, maybe some copper axes and saws. It's like, okay, sure, go ahead and do it. They try to do it. They get maybe a quarter inch in a week and give up. So,
yeah.
I mean, the theories don't stack up to the reality, in my opinion. I absolutely believe there's way more to the story, man.
Yeah. So yeah, we can.
Yeah, I hear that, man. I can't imagine somebody not looking at that, what you just said. You look at the pyramids and then they say, oh, well, they didn't even have a wheel. I mean, come on.
Yeah, in the whole story of the pyramid about being a tomb just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially the way the thing is designed. The best theory I've kind of seen is that it actually was an energy generation device, and from the way that some people describe it is that that there is evidence of some kind of maybe like a chemical reaction in one part of the chamber. And then, maybe it was some kind of resonance device that, they started this chemical reaction and it started a vibration. And because the inner part of the pyramid is made out of granite, which is kind of a quartz structure to it, that creates an electrical output effect, because it's like the piezoelectric effect with crystals. And so that is one of the possibilities that they talk about, because the pyramids were supposed to had a capstone of gold, but that was stolen way in the past. But and then the outside was limestone, so it's an electrical insulator. So there's a lot of speculation on the pyramids are actually energy generation devices, and you see these monoliths around the pyramids too. And from what I've researched with ionic energy harvesting, you need a fine point to capture the ionic charge from the atmosphere. So these monoliths could possibly be a way of capturing that energy that the pyramids are putting off as well.
I love that.
The situation. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that there's so many things that we could learn if we just try to open our eyes to the concept. I swear, when we shut ourselves down, I mean, not us, but when people listen to the experts, the authorities out there that want to shut down these possibilities, I swear it's a huge missed opportunity, because maybe there is some technology there that we could start using today. There's weird things underneath it too, like saltwater tunnels and shafts that go to the Sphinx and back and forth that we have no explanation for. So I figure what I'm saying is, if we sat down and actually tried to figure out what is going on, just instead of labeling it a tomb, regardless of the fact we've never found any bodies in it, we would maybe be able to get some huge breakthroughs today, is what I'm saying. I get frustrated when I don't know, maybe it's the Graham Hancock in me. I get pissy because they always want to shut it down before achieving a conversation,
Yeah, actually, absolutely. Yeah, I just want to know the truth and try to figure out some of these things, and a lot of these things just don't add up to the way we've been told. And so it's just interesting to look at, and with my background in engineering, it makes you look at some of these things a little bit differently, I guess.
We were just talking about the Rife technology stuff, and you're talking about the pyramid here being a giant electrical generator. Who's to say that it was not an alchemical process that put off a particular resonant frequency that caused the area to flourish? And you could ward off disease, you could have longevity, you could live in health, you could You could even with those obelisks you're talking about, if you're putting off that type of system and you got your atmospheric conditions right, the top of those things would probably glow. I mean, it would be you'd have an electrical accumulation right there, so you'd have like city lampposts all over the place, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
so
I mean that's actually something that some people have played around with and done some experiments with. I know the Russians were playing around with different pyramid structures and built like fiberglass pyramids and did all this stuff and actually found that if you put food on the inside of the structure, food would keep for longer and different things. Or the reports of what those would do. So
another weird thing too, if they put particular stones, limestones and other things in there, they would crystallize in there as well. So there's some kind of weird energy being pulled up through there. And then they had an extinct species of plant pop up around one of them for about a mile radius around it. So we're back to the Rife technology and the information being the basis for cellular biology.
Yeah. It's completely fascinating, and I know looking into all that, I looked into Wilhelm Reich, I believe, which is the guy that was studying orgone energy, and they looked at They looked at it with I can't remember the name of it's like energy that you can see coming off of a living thing, but they were able to see
like you can see with Kirlian photography.
They were able to look at these orgone little structures, these little orgone pyramids with Kirlian photography, and you see like a spiral vortex of energy coming off the objects.
I'm come down.
So,
yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah. Have you guys ever looked into the orgone stuff?
Yeah, I've looked into it some, read up on it some, and it's in one of those books I sent you too. On that book from Jerry Basilato's called Lost Science. There's a whole section in there on Wilhelm Reich, and he was able to show, even way back then, he would take like a gold plate or something and put it in a room and then run an antenna outside, and was able to show that through energetic exchanges, energy would flow into the gold plate and radiate out, even in a darkened room. So, yeah, it's just weird stuff. You can get into all kind of things, and this just a long list. That's just one of the things that has convinced me that the biology stuff we're talking about is all electrical, because we can't get away from it. It surrounds us.
Yeah. So okay. Gregory looks like got to do some quick surgery on his kid. Yeah, man. So that's I mean, all this stuff is really fascinating. I just when I was reading the compendium, some of the things that what Billy Carson speculates is that Thoth was talking about different technologies like that are mentioned in this thing that are similar to modern day technologies, things that we're just now discovering how to use. Like one of them that was talked about was that they were able to send a beam to freeze their opponents, and they were Billy Carson says it's very similar to the active denial system that they have now, which is like it's a directed beam energy weapon. It's a non-lethal weapon, but it's called the active denial system, and I think DARPA created it, and I guess it just like
they
makes
have a number of non-lethal energetic weapons that they can use for crowd dispersement, that'll make you vomit, or just a number of different things.
Right. So yeah. So these are some of the things that Thoth is saying in the Emerald Tablets, but that we're just now understanding some of these technologies. So what a lot of people think maybe he's describing some magic or something like that in the past. He's now speculating that this was high technology, and even talking about how the consciousness transfer could happen because it describes that Thoth goes down to the halls of Amenti in the book, and how he was able to like put his body in a regeneration chamber, and then you still walk around the planet, I guess, into a different body, and then kind of go back and swap it out after 100 years or something like that. And so,
well, if you think about the consciousness and mind being quantum in nature and non-local, then why not? I mean, doesn't it make sense that you would be able to do that?
Yeah. It doesn't put it outside of the realm of possibilities. And I know, there's things like they've been doing animal cloning for a long time. And so, what makes that step to doing human cloning not outside of the realm of possibilities as well? So
it's like Ra's al Ghul from Batman, man. I'm telling you.
What was that, Greg?
I think we'd have to be pretty gullible as a society to believe that somebody somewhere hasn't tried to clone a human.
Yeah.
There's some stuff going on in China that would probably make our eyes roll back and want to shut off our computer forever if we looked at it. I'll tell you. But it's funny how when we look back at all these what are supposed to be ancient myths, like the stories of Gilgamesh, and then you can look at the Hindu books, and all the other things that have been around for 5,000 years. It's like I always wonder if we're like pursuing the powers of the gods in all of our old stories, or are we, actually just fulfilling a past? Like none of this stuff is actually like truly, supernatural powers. It's actually what we are capable of doing at some point in our evolution. To me, like, again, every theory is just a theory until we have some real proof. I would love to see Thoth come back down and be like, okay, I'm back. Or any kind of Messiah whatsoever. I would love that. That would actually make my day. I'm the kind of guy who would enjoy that. I'm looking for it. But it could just be a very natural thing, like all these old stories.
Yeah, I think so. Go ahead, Robbie.
Have you guys heard of this emerging universe theory?
No.
The way they describe it is that the universe emerges out of the quantum foam due to consciousness, and that consciousness and conscious decision can affect physical reality because of the intrinsic link.
So
it's called the emerging universe theory. It's pretty interesting. You get a chance to look into some of that.
Well, this was also talked about by Billy Carson, was that when Thoth was what Thoth talks about in the Emerald Tablets as well, is that you can create your own reality tunnel based on what you are projecting and taking actions on in reality. So you just first, to manifest what your vision is, when you're manifesting it and taking the actions that you need to manifest your vision, you're actually creating your own reality tunnel that way. So, and
yeah. So that's very close to what they're actually talking about in quantum physics. So, I mean, again, you got another correlation there where it parallels.
Yeah. So, some of these things may have been understood in our ancient past, and even, the abilities that we hear about with, being able to do remote viewing and different things. If everything is entangled in our consciousness, then maybe it is possible to tap into that field and to gain some of that knowledge from there.
I believe that there really is.
There's a fast. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I really do believe there is way more to our mind's control over the body than we well, I don't want to talk down about the West, but I certainly don't do a whole lot of meditation. I don't do any of that kind of deep soul searching. I haven't touched a chakra in a long time, I guess is what I'm saying. But there are people out there that truly think that the mind over matter is 100% real. And I have seen some studies, like from people who I'd like to trust, that would go out to these high mountaintops in the Himalayas and meet the monk who could slow his heart down and speed it up with thought, you know what I mean? Sitting perfectly still. And, you know what I mean? There's the kind of people that can petrify themselves, under a waterfall. Like, they are a bit beyond anything that I can kind of, I mean, shit, I can barely catch my breath doing gardening. So I don't know what these guys are up to, but it really makes me want to get to know what they're up to, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's all kinds of stories. Even there's some guy in India that they monitored for a while, and he went without any food or water for I think it was weeks, and they monitored him, and he never had to use the bathroom or anything, and he just kind of existed without food and water.
Absorbed ambient energy.
Yeah.
There's a question come on there if I had any links for the emerging universe, and unfortunately my keyboard is not functioning correctly. I don't know what's going on, so I can't get anything to put up there as far as links. But I
have heard Nassim Haramein talk about something like this, where he talks about there's a possibility that universes could just like become like bubbles. They bubble from other universes, so you could have one universe and then
overlap. There's a fascinating experiment that I read about, and it's just really easy to do. But this guy, he took a cannonball and he carried it up, like 5 stories high, and dropped it onto a concrete slab. He weighed the cannonball before he did it, and then he weighed it after, and it lost weight when it impacted. And then the weight would slowly come back over the course of 10 or 15 minutes. And this falls in line with Nassim Haramein talking about the atom with the event horizon. So basically what we have is about 20% of all of our matter is sitting right on this event horizon, and all it takes is a jar for it to cross that horizon and be out of our perspective view, which implies that it has to be entangled with something else. So we're entangled all over the place. And this is where, to me, if you're getting this into this consciousness stuff, I don't think you're going to be able to get away from this, because you're going to be entangled with everything else. And it makes it more plausible.
Yeah, it's fascinating to even think. I mean, to think about it, and there's other things that they all kind of tie together with a lot of this stuff. And one of the good things that I watched a while back was the movie that was put together by Foster Gamble. He did the Thrive. He's done the Thrive movement, but he talks about how everything is like a toroidal structure. So everything is kind of based on you have 2 poles, but then everything is fed back into itself. So it's like everything is kind of like connected, and a lot of these. A lot of our structures are toroidal in nature as well. So that's something that I'd tell everybody to kind of look at as well. Yeah. So,
that is the one that I'm talking about there. You said, is this thing that I was talking about, the emergent universe? Yeah, that is it. You get into the quantum theory on that stuff, and it gets into all of this stuff we were just talking about. But then if you get into this ancient technology stuff like the Emerald tablets, if they knew this information back then, they would be able to build structures and technologies that would utilize metamaterials that would react with these things, and it would seem like magic. I mean, you'd be able to do all sorts of things.
Right. So, yeah, I think maybe we're on the cusp of learning, or maybe relearning some of these things. So, yeah, there's 2 Thrives now, huh? So, yeah, I knew they were putting out a new video, but yeah, Patient Zero, you know about that. So, yeah, I've heard that they're going to be putting out a new video, but I didn't know if it's already out or not yet. But yeah, a lot of these guys are even talking about over Unity energy devices. Like Billy Carson says that they're working, or his group is working on, he's got a group that's working on over Unity energy devices and wants to hopefully bring them out sooner rather than later. So I don't know if we're like right on the cusp of this stuff, and because in the Thrive movement they also talk about trying to work with people to release some free energy or over Unity devices as well. So but when we talk about free energy, it's not actually free. It's just we're taking energy from the material of space-time that's all around us at all times. It's not actually...
Yeah, there's a lot of energy there. I was listening to a thing before we got to talking about thorium, and they were talking about technology back from the 50s and 60s where they did a liquid fluoride thorium reactor, and that something the size of a coffee can, the thorium, would be able to power up a city of about 100,000 people for a year. And you think about that, and then the waste would be about the size of a coffee cup, and then it would solidify into a salt and would not be radioactive. They didn't pursue that back in the day because they couldn't get weapons grade uranium out of the process, and one of the byproducts killed cancer. So naturally you can't have that out in society. But that's kind of making a little comeback. But that just gives you an idea. If you had something the size of an M&M, a peanut M&M, of thorium, and a little mini reactor, you could power your house for, a decade or so. So
yeah,
think about that in comparison to the universe at large and how much energy there is there.
Right. Yeah, even that's been a big talk on how to retrofit a lot of our nuclear facilities, is to just retrofit them over to thorium, and then we could reuse a lot of the spent nuclear fuel that we have stored all over the place as well. So, and I know Professor Bromide on Steam It here is... Go ahead.
That's another side effect of one of these over Unity devices. Some of them change the energetic structure of the radioactive waste and makes it inert, and reduces the the half-life or whatever they call it down from thousands of years down to like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And the guy from MIT basically got killed over that when they were doing the cold fusion stuff. So
yeah, so that's one of the things Patient Zero brought up, is that he thinks that we're getting gaslit on this over Unity, or on this free energy stuff. And I would say, I would not trust and wait for anybody to bring out the device or whatever, because I think it's got to be within our own responsibility to start understanding all these technologies and try to experiment with them ourselves and try to prove it out ourselves instead of waiting on somebody for a solution. So, I
don't know that we'll be able to do a garage workshop liquid fluoride thorium reactor, but we could definitely work on some over Unity.
Yeah. So it's just, I think, that getting into a lot of the Tom Bearden work and all that stuff, it starts to make it starts to come into the realm of possibilities in your mind, the way he's describing it, because one of the first things that he described was that if you can imagine that what we are perceiving as empty space is actually energy in an equilibrium form. When you look at the work that Buckminster Fuller was doing, where he created the vector equilibrium matrix or whatever, I believe is what it was called, a vector equilibrium, then you can see how what we're perceiving as empty space could just be energy in an equilibrium state or something, just waiting to transform its
that
state.
don't even account for the dark energy and stuff either. So,
well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the dark energy. It seems like they're
kind of folding it back in. But I mean, I'm just saying
yeah.
that what you're talking about there with the over unity stuff, you don't even have to get into that to see huge differentials. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so what's Patient Zero's first thing I do is plug my air conditioner into it. Yeah, so yeah, there's a lot of these devices, and one of the things, if you go into the past, you can look at and look up, is there's a guy, Thomas Henry Murray, and he supposedly had a like 55-pound device that was able to produce like kilowatts of electricity, and so
had a suitcase. He had some specialized tubes in there that he built or had made or something. But from the thing that I read on him, he had found some kind of weird powder in Germany, and I had deduced after reading that and several other things that he had come across some kind of metamaterial that the early Nazis were messing around with, or that Vril society was messing around with. So
yeah, they were looking into well, for one thing, let's I'll just say thanks for joining us, Gregory Patrick. You got to run, but thanks for joining the conversation, brother. So yeah, looking into the Nazis were actually playing around with a lot of this esoteric knowledge, and supposedly, getting into, some of this maybe occulted knowledge about maybe our ancestors had this higher technology. And yeah, one of them was
and see earlier, when we was talking about metamaterials earlier, that's the same sort of thing. If you could get your hands on metamaterial, or if you can figure out a way to manufacture metamaterial using chemical processes or whatever, then you can combine those with scalar type structures, and you get these weird effects where you have over unity, or you might have something else weird go on depending on how it's set up. But yeah, so I think Moreau there's a good example to look at that.
Yeah, Murray.
What he was doing, he had some specialized tubes that he made, and he had this white powder that supposedly nobody knew what it was. But then later on, I found out in something that he had found something in a boxcar as he was leaving Germany, and he just had a handful of this powder. But he'd just put this little bit of powder in these vacuum tubes, and it gave him this enormous response. And he was basically tapping into like what you were talking about, wanting to do with the aerial voltage.
Yeah.
Using that to power up the tubes, and then the tubes were drawing in the amperage somehow. It's pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, because if you do go into if you do go higher in the atmosphere, you have particles that are pulling ionic charges not only from our sun but from galactic rays as well, and you can even do that with a something that's called a cloud chamber. You can look at these particles coming in and disturbing the air in there, and it's just like you just use some dry ice, and then you have a metal plate, and you can do it in like a plastic bin, a clear plastic bin, and then that difference in temperature can cause a condensation in there, and you can see these particles coming in and disturbing the cloud inside the chamber. So you can kind of prove to yourself that we've got this energy coming in at all times, 24/7. And so,
Yeah, and so that's the basis of over unity, is that you're just tapping a different energy source rather than the fossil fuel or whatever. So it's an open loop system that allows you to tap in ambient energy rather than have a closed loop system where it requires energy to keep itself going, and you're always going to be less than what you put in.
yeah. So, yeah, there's some things I want to experiment with the ionic energy harvesting. And one of the things that I read with this group is that when you have these fine points, charges are attracted to the fine points. So what they've done is they've found that they could increase their collection of the energy from that voltage potential from these charged ions by using like carbon fiber. And because the tips of the carbon fiber are very sharp points, then you get a higher collection of those charged particles there. So that's something that I'm kind of like trying to think about is maybe creating a really rapidly deployed antenna tower and being able to, put your carbon fiber on the end of a conductor and then be able to maybe create a little rapidly deployed energy collection device thing.
Yeah.
Possibly.
My gosh, did my microphone pick up that loud truck?
I didn't hear it. We actually, hey, welcome to the show, ESP Change, listening on Vim. Yeah, that's the first time I've checked you out, but thanks for joining, man. But yeah, Yusuf said, other than water and food, is energy is our most valuable commodity for sure. And, so, yeah, I don't know. Patient Zero, you were saying that what would we do with all that excess energy earlier, I think. And you can do all kind. I mean, if you have all that extra energy, you can do all kinds of neat stuff with it. You can smelt metals, or you can melt down metals from the clay. Maybe even.
I think one of the reasons why there's anything that would be considered super over unity would be you could easily get into a runaway situation where you had a feedback loop and it was just building and building and building and building and building. As long as you had a small scale, it wouldn't be a problem. But if you take some knucklehead in a garage somewhere that tries to build one the size of a Mack truck, you might, like Gregory Patrick was talking about, you might all of a sudden have a crater. And
yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, maybe that's one of the reasons why we may have to come to a certain spiritual maturity before we create or have these devices, because what would stop anybody from wanting to maybe build a runaway device that could do a lot of destructive or have a lot of destructive force? So
right, because now I see that Patient Zero put a thing in there. If we had a mini thorium generator that had to somehow contain all that energy without exploding, well, see, the thorium is a heat exchange generator. They use that to generate heat, which turns a turbine, or creates steam that does a turbine. And they actually have a salt plug in the bottom of them or something, so that if it overheats, that plug melts, the stuff drains away, and it cools back off. That's kind of a fail-safe, but that's different than an over unity. An over unity would be, imagine the turbine that you're spinning up with the thorium heat all of a sudden, instead of 1,000 watts, it starts drawing power in from ambient energy, and it goes to 1,500, and then 2,000, and then 10,000, and then 100,000, and then 50,000. And you would reach a point where that generator would just be, it'd be ready to explode.
Yeah.
Out on it. But as long as all you're doing is putting the heat coming off the thorium to spin the turbine, well, then you don't have that going on because it's being generated by the mechanical motion of the turbine rather than an influx of electrical power pulling straight into it. Now, I'm not saying that you could do that with that generator. I'm just throwing that out there as an example, but you'd have to have a specific open-end configuration in order to draw energy from the vacuum or whatever. But they are exploring ways to do that. I think if they're going to do any type of interstellar travel, they're going to have it.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I've speculated on is how you would create if you can pull energy straight from basically anywhere in the universe. If you're pulling energy from what we're calling the vacuum or the ether or something like that, then how are you storing it and using it on the fly? And it leads me to think that maybe you're using some capacitor technologies or something.
Yeah, you probably would have a minimal amount of storage if you had it set up correctly, because you would just throttle it and use it as you needed it.
Yeah.
The trick is to keep it from overloading once you get it gated, because it's going to want to just pile that energy in, just keep it coming.
Yeah.
Have you read any of the Steinmetz stuff?
No, you did send me some of that stuff, but I read about
it's super dry.
I read about the high voltage switching thing, and that kind of
high voltage switching. He describes where this energy wants to pile up and accumulate.
Yeah,
and you can think of it like a flow control valve. If you got high pressure, and you let a little water through, and then you shut the valve off, and it can't go back, and you just keep pressurizing the tank, that it's going into. That's kind of what you're doing with the thing. So you want to have a gated output where you're using that energy to bleed it off. Otherwise, they're just to sit there and keep accumulating. So, but he describes some of that stuff in some of his mathematical work, and this was stuff back in the 20s and 30s. So, I mean, you can imagine where they are today with it.
Yeah, so the switching effect the way that kind of makes sense to me is that maybe you have like a time dilation effect or something that happens where you have all this energy that, like you said, it's piling up, because when you have all those electrons moving so rapidly, then that speed difference is going to maybe change the localized time even. And so maybe that's something that's happening. I don't know.
Yeah, through my experiences and my experiments, we've noticed that there's field effects that build up around devices. And if you go inside that field area, you'll have different things. Like we had one time, we had a cell phone overloaded through the optical input and blew the phone up, literally overheated the phone. It was inside the field. You had to stand back away from it, And so it was, you get these little field effects that happen around it. And then in one case, we did have cell phones that ran 4 minutes slower than wall clocks and that sort of thing. But I chalked that up to somehow interfering with a microwave transmission coming into the phone.
Yeah, maybe it was shielded from the microwave transmission.
Yeah, there's something inside the field there that was interfering with the microwave. But the interesting part is that it had a specific time dilation in the microwave. So I agree with you on that. I think there is some type of time dilation that goes on inside these fields. And Tom Bearden will sit and argue with you and tell you that part of the over unity energy comes from time itself.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because you have to. Well, I mean, space and time are interrelated with each, or they're entangled with each other. So, yeah, maybe.
It's not just our time either. If you look at the multiverse type scenario where you've got all of these different overlaying dimensionals, stacked on top of each other.
Yeah.
Now you've got that times a million, or even more. So.
Yeah. So. Yeah, well, the Meadows and Makers show has turned into the theoretical physics show, which is probably why, and we lost a lot of our audience, but.
Oh man, I'm sorry. We get away from that. Then let's talk about aquaponics or something.
No, man, it's just that this is some stuff that maybe definitely wanted to create our own show, and maybe get more people that are interested in the specifics of these topics, but I'm
people are probably interested in backyard projects and doing stuff and getting off grid and that sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, Vlad said yeah. Yeah, so the most interesting show. We got a couple of people that are really digging it, but that's cool. Good deal. So yeah, man, some of the things that I was talking about working on with you with aquaponics and all that stuff too is to start to build our own little solar power systems, and maybe even experimenting with some DIY battery walls and stuff like that, some lithium iron phosphate stuff. So
yeah. Or even we could go back and employ some of these older style energy generation. We could use earth batteries like they used to use in telegraph systems to power up aquaponics.
Yeah, because you've done some experimentation with the earth batteries, right? You put like copper rods in the ground, I guess is how you do it, and you just kind of like.
It's amazing. You can get voltage directly out of the ground, dude. I mean, I've done it.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. I took and I got this. What happened was I went to this, I got online and bought a bunch of stuff from the Redstone Arsenal government liquidation auction. Yeah. And in one of the packs, they had this thing where they tested conductivity for the ground. And I thought, what the crap is this? But it looked interesting. So I bid like $10 and I got it, and it's $1,000 instrument. They didn't use it no more, but they use it to test electrical conductivity around missiles, to make sure that they didn't have stray voltage, going into their missile silo.
Oh.
So I just took the probes that they had in there, which they were all copper, and stuck those things in the ground, and they had little wing nuts on them, and just ran out a wire into the house or into the shop in there, and started tinkering around with it, and it had 7, 8, 9 volts, and then one time it had 15, and then one night when it was raining, I had 86 volts on those damn wires.
Wow.
And so I stuck some capacitors in there, and man, you build up 200 volts in just a matter of seconds. And so it was pretty interesting. But
yeah, I'd love
at the time, they didn't have super capacitors, but I'd like to hook up some super capacitors to them.
Yeah, you got some companies out there. One is I believe it's from Croatia, that they're called Skeleton Technologies, but they're using more carbon nanotube type stuff for that. But yeah, the Earth battery and the atmospheric energy collection. I believe you definitely need to store the energy in some capacitors and then be able to bleed it off somehow. Because
you got to be able to bleed it off slowly. So you got to build up a large enough tension to where you can get the amperage out of it, like Rondon there's saying. Because if you just take it and plug it straight in the ground, you might have your voltage, but as soon as you try to run a fan, it's going to drop it down to nearly nothing. But there are techniques where you can store it up. Which, what we might do is build up a store of power, and then use that to fire up an air compressor, pump up a tank, and then use the air on the air compressor to run like an airlift scenario rather than having pumps. And
Yeah.
I don't see why there's not. I could think of half a dozen different ways to try to do that and get it off the grid. And
Yeah,
and
even
not have to be.
last week had Tedx on. He was talking about the water battery, and even putting up pumping water up to like a water tower or something, and then you bleed it off on a turbine, and you can just have like an upper tank and a lower tank essentially, and just use gravity power. So I mean those things are all possibilities as well. If you could have something that you could bleed off into storage for a minute and then run something continuously and then try to harvest the energy later as well.
That's something I don't understand is why in God's name they're not using piezoelectric crystals
Yeah.
and putting them out everywhere, roadways, subways, sidewalks. There's so much human energy being expended every day that we could pick up on and
Yeah.
put that right back in the grid. I don't understand why they're not pursuing any of that stuff.
Well, I think we'll have to do it ourselves. We'll have to do it ourselves, man. I just ran across this one story recently about this kid up in Canada that took it upon himself to go and fill potholes with gravel, and he put out a sign that said, "Pay me instead of your taxes for filling all these potholes," and people have been paying him in cannabis, coffee, and cash.
That's cool, man.
So maybe we can go around and start building our own little piezoelectric roadways in certain areas, and then start to get donations.
It would appear to me that if you take why couldn't you use a piezoelectric cylinder, a large one now, and build a skyscraper on it?
Yeah.
Because the building itself, with all that weight pushing down, those piezoelectric crystals put off electrons under pressure. And so,
Yeah.
come on, let's at least experiment with it,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that we should do this, man. I think we should just start building some roadways with some built-in piezoelectrics, and just put out a donation box for some different donations.
You could literally build panels, Greg, made
Yeah.
out of these things, and line subways with them.
Yeah.
Line the walls with these.
Yeah.
And it would generate the shit out of some power.
Yeah, because it's picking up on the mechanical vibration, right?
From the subway moving back and forth.
Yeah.
This is just another example of the over unity thing. There's energy everywhere. We're just not using it.
Right. So, yeah, and even you have the thermoelectric effect from like Peltier devices, which you just use the thermal difference of something and it can generate a voltage as well. So yeah, anytime you have a disturbance in high to low or anything like that, or vibration or anything, I mean, that's all energy in different states.
Yeah, I kind of get a little perturbed when people are talking about, oh God, here we go, perpetual motion. When you think about it, there's nothing that's not in motion. Everything is always in motion, always.
Right.
Every cell, every atom, every single molecule, every electron, everything is in constant motion. So the idea that nothing can be perpetually in motion is ludicrous in itself.
True.
It's just a way to put it down, I guess. But anyway. Okay, so we were supposed to be talking about electronics and not this.
No, yeah. So we had Amber Uper just joined us, and on Janita. Sorry, I apologize if I get your name wrong, but thanks for joining us, guys. But so yeah, so the patient zero says the U.S. is powered by energy in the state of taxes. Yeah, screw taxes, man. I just got all that stuff done. I freaking hate the paperwork. I hate all the taxes. It's a pain in the butt for doing this taxes and stuff, and that's the big reason why I'm a big proponent of getting self-sufficient and kind of getting off the grid, and becoming more self-reliant, to try to just avoid even the system itself, to get outside of it. I know, Vlad, you love the taxes here because you do people's taxes, so you're in the tax business, but yeah, taxes suck.
Taxes literally represent human energy. I mean, the energy you expend to create your living, they siphon that off.
Exactly. And then, where is that money going? When Donald Rumsfeld talked about, what was it, 2.1 trillion missing back before 9/11. And
yeah, the day before.
Yeah, so it makes you think, where is that money going? And yeah, it definitely makes me think that there is, there's secret space program type stuff, and there's much higher technology than we even know about. And you can even see some of that stuff in what Dr. Paul LaViolette that you turned me on to was talking about with the bomber. Supposedly runs off of the B-2 bomber, runs off of like the work that T. Townsend Brown was doing with the charging the front of the wing, and expelling other yeah. Which so
it's called a flame jet generator that they use on that. But now they do have a secretive a main turbine generator inside the plane, that once they land, the pilots and everybody disembarks, and then they have somebody that has a specialized classified clearance that comes in and maintenances that thing.
Yeah.
So even the pilots and stuff don't know the inner workings of exactly how, the technology's all put together.
Right.
But,
right.
I mean, I know theoretically how it all works, but if I was shown it, if I was able to look at it, I could trace it back and say, okay, this is how it's doing it. But, they obviously have something going on there, and it's speculated that they do have some type of over unity turbine inside the plane that's fueling that electrical source for that to charge the wing up.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, ESP changes brought up the fact that the Pentagon recently failed its first ever audit. 21 trillion, well documented, gone. Yeah, there's a lot of seeing some of that, what the government does to just mismanage funds in government contracting. They'll, it doesn't cost what, $1,000 for a toilet seat or something like that. Where's that money going? So
I kind of think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier too, that a lot of that money's being used to build up a secretive infrastructure.
Yeah. Yeah.
They definitely have lots of things that are classified and secret. And it's not that far of a stretch to think that they've been funneling this money away to create programs for decades now that we don't know anything about.
Yeah, I believe that it is a high likelihood. So yeah, it's just when you can't explain where trillions of dollars go, yeah, it really makes you think about it.
$1 is a lot of money, man. I mean, that's a lot of money.
Right. Yeah. So. Yeah, Team Humble, I saw you just joined us, but yeah, the Meadows and Makers show today is theoretical physics with Robbie Olson. So we're getting into some neat topics, something that I'm really fascinated in, and I really like to get into some of these topics because of some of the research and background research that I've done. So, yeah, we're just having a fun conversation on some of these possibilities. But yeah, so ESP change is talking about. They're not gonna tell us. But one of the books that I read a while back was a book by Stan Deyo, and he wrote a book called The Cosmic Conspiracy. But what he talked about in that book was that, yes, there has been a lot of this technology that has gone breakaway and has been silenced, and that part of the agenda is to actually kind of come and confuse people that there is going to be another there's going to be like a fake alien invasion. It's not actually aliens, it's our government.
Yeah, have you ever heard of Project Bluebeam?
Yeah, Bluebeam is the one where they're supposedly gonna project like holographic images. They can project holographic images into the air, into the atmosphere.
Yeah, so I mean, if they could use that to fake off enemy combatants on a battlefield, they could dang sure do it over a city. You know, the general population, they wouldn't be any wiser on it. They would just be like, what in the crap? And everybody be panicking. Yeah, Bluebeam, I believe that. Isn't it Bluebeam, Greg?
Yeah, I believe so. Let me Google that real quick, or put it in the search engine real quick. I believe that is the right one. Let's see. Project Bluebeam. Yeah, you got different pictures of like different images in the sky and everything like that. So yeah, there's different.
It's all about keeping the need alive. You know, they have to justify their existence somehow. So it's just constant one false flag after another.
Well, it's just like, you know, in George Orwell's 1984, you just constantly have to create an enemy to keep the military industrial complex going.
Yeah.
So
that's what it's what Eisenhower warned us about too. You know, the persistence of the industrial complex and the rise of power.
Yeah. So it's just something that people can think about and not be tricked by. Is that not to buy into the Hegelian dialectic of the problem, reaction, solution, and using whatever fear tactics that they're going to use to actually like put this in the realm of your possibilities in your mind, that that this could happen, and it would seem magical because a lot of this technology has kind of been suppressed. That there is a possibility that there's a lot of this technology out there that would appear very magical to us, but it's not anything to be afraid of.
Stuff that's real beneficial is just hidden from us, and then the stuff that's pretty destructive is hidden from us too. But yeah, I think you're dead on there. It's something that the vast majority of the population before the stealth bomber, couldn't imagine anything even doing that. And of course now that's fairly common, but stuff that they have under wraps, under black projects and all of that. I mean, we've been sitting here talking about a lot of stuff today, but I bet we haven't even scratched the surface of what they've got going on.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So, we got to have our own specific show about this, and we gotta call it something. Come up with a good name.
Let's start off with that Rife technology and go into some detail on it. And because we can pull the science out and then take the mystery away from it, you know, and then that way people can see it for what it is, and that way you pull the rug out from underneath all of the people, the debunkers and everything.
Yeah,
and once
absolutely.
What it is and all the empirical data and everything, you cannot escape the conclusion. You know, it's just it's there. But we start out with that, and then we'll pick another subject and go do that. So.
Yeah. I definitely we got to get that going on, and I appreciate everybody coming to hang out for the show today. I'm not sure if Crimson Clad is having her show coming up next. Yeah, I think I might have seen something that she's not gonna have her show today, so you might have a little bit of a gap for, I believe we have later on today, we have the Information War guys coming on. The MSP Waves a little bit later, but thanks for hanging out, everybody. I really appreciate all you guys being here today for the show. Robbie, I really appreciate you coming on and joining me today on the last notice. Our last minute notice.
You inviting me, man.
Yeah, really appreciate you, brother. And yeah, we're coming up on the end of the show here.
Again next time.
Yeah, man, you're welcome anytime for the Meadows and Makers podcast, and definitely we'll be working on coming up with our own little show that maybe we can get into some of this esoteric stuff and more of the physics, the theoretical physics stuff and everything. So thanks again, everybody. And y'all have a wonderful afternoon if we don't get to see you. And peace, everybody. Great deal. Thanks. Thank you all for listening again. All right, man. Really appreciate you coming on.
We will talk to you next time. I guess I can just cut it off there.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. And I hope you have a great day today, and we'll catch you later.
All right, man. Have a good one.
All right, you too, brother. We'll talk to you later.